The smell of spiced apple cider and cinnamon rolls floated through the air as I stepped into the community center. Deliverance, my mother, had spared no detail for her 65th birthday. String lights hung across the ceiling, glowing gold against the deep blue tablecloths. Laughter echoed from every corner of the room. I recognized old neighbors, church friends, even her hairdresser. Everyone was there. Everyone except the version of myself that used to feel at home in this family. I adjusted the hem of my navy dress and moved toward the table near the back, my name on a folded card. I used to sit up front, beside Mom. This year, I got a spot by the dessert table. Not that it bothered me. I'd learned long ago how not to take things personally. I poured a glass of sparkling water and scanned the room. Sophrona, my brother, was making his rounds like a politician, hugging, laughing, handing off plates of cupcakes like campaign flyers. "You made it," he said, patting my shoulder briefly. "Nice dress. Chicago treating you well?" "I live in Denver now," I reminded him. He blinked. "Right, Denver, you move a lot." Before I could respond, he was already off to charm someone else. I sipped my drink. A part of me wanted to leave. Another part stayed because I guess I wanted to believe I still had a seat at this table. Not just the folding chair by the wall, but a real place in this family. The music softened. Mom tapped her wine glass. Everyone turned toward her. "Thank you all for coming," she began, voice strong as ever. 65's not so bad when you're surrounded by love and good genes." Light chuckles rippled through the crowd. She turned toward me, her smile fading. "Ayala," she said, cutting through the noise like a knife. "You never called to thank us. So I'm asking now, what did you do with the $300,000 we gave you?" Silence. A sharp, gut-punching silence. Forks froze mid-air. Glasses paused halfway to lips. My grip loosened, and the utensil in my hand clattered onto the porcelain plate. "What?" I managed. 300... What? She didn't blink. "The $300,000 we wired to your account. From your father's trust." People were staring. Deliverance's voice hadn't been loud, but it didn't need to be. It was the kind of voice people listened to, the kind that didn't leave space for denial. I felt a heat rise to my face, but it wasn't shame. It was confusion. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said slowly. My brother took a step forward, trying to interject, voice smooth as butter. "She must have forgotten, Mom. It went through the trust. She was probably too busy in Denver." I turned toward him, stunned. "What trust?" His expression didn't waver, but his neck flushed red. He didn't look at me when he answered. "You said you wanted help managing it, remember?" "No," I snapped, louder than intended. "I didn't." Eyes were darting between us now. Some guests pretended to check their phones. Others looked embarrassed for me. "Check your account," Sophrona said, shrugging. "It should be there." I grabbed my phone with shaky hands, opened my banking app, and waited. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the soft hum of music resuming. My last large deposit? $5,000 from a consulting gig last spring. $300,000? Gone. Not missing, because it had never been there to begin with. "I'm not seeing it," I said, quieter now, as if volume could change reality. Mom folded her napkin with surgical precision. "Well then, we have a problem, don't we?" I wanted to speak, argue, scream maybe, but the words caught in my throat. My mother's stare didn't soften. Sophrona didn't look up. And I wasn't sure if I was the victim of a mistake or something far more calculated. I leaned back in my chair, trying to keep my breath even. My mind spun. Had I missed something? A letter? An email? Some legal document I'd forgotten? No, I was careful with money. Always had been. I tracked every cent. Color-coded spreadsheets, automatic reminders, folder systems. There was no way I'd forget $300,000, which meant someone had either taken it or rerouted it before I ever saw it. The air in the room had shifted. Conversations resumed, but only on the surface. Underneath was tension, tight as a violin string. I watched my mother chat with one of her church friends, expression unreadable. Sophrona leaned in, whispered something in her ear. They both laughed. I set my phone down. Something inside me clicked, like the final domino falling in a line I hadn't realized was being set up. Deliverance's sudden distance these past few months, Sofrona's new Tesla, the abrupt cancellation of our planned family meeting, the way Mom brushed off my questions with, "Oh, your brother's handling that." Handling what? I opened my texts and scrolled back. No notifications from the trust, no mention of a disbursement, not a single confirmation email or legal memo. I typed a message to my financial advisor. "Hi, can you pull up any flagged incoming transfers or requests tied to my SSN or name in the last 12 months? Something feels off." I hit send. Then without a word, I stood up and walked toward the back hallway. I needed air. No, I needed to cry without an audience. Inside the women's restroom, I gripped the edge of the sink and stared at my reflection. My lipstick had faded. There was a smudge of mascara beneath one eye. The version of me in the mirror didn't look humiliated. She looked betrayed. I splashed water on my face and patted dry with a paper towel. Behind me, the door creaked open. I expected Mom. It was Valmai, my aunt. She said nothing, just stood beside me, pulling out a tube of hand lotion. "Your brother's been playing this game a long time," she said eventually. "Don't let him tell your story for you." I nodded. After she left, I stayed a few more minutes, not hiding, preparing. When I returned to the party, people had resumed dancing, sipping champagne, pretending nothing had happened, but I saw the way they glanced at me, curious, uncertain. Sofrona stood near the buffet, laughing with a couple from church. His posture was loose, confident. His eyes never met mine. Too relaxed, too ready. He looked too calm for someone caught off guard. That's when I knew. He saw it coming. I walked back into the room like someone returning to a conversation she hadn't agreed to start. My chair was still there, untouched, the water glass half full and sweating. Around me, laughter had resumed. Light, forced, too rehearsed to be genuine. The birthday banner above the buffet table fluttered from the ceiling fan's breeze. Every detail of the party was just as I left it, except me. People glanced up as I approached, then back to their plates. I could see the shift in posture, the polite smiles barely stretching. My mother avoided looking in my direction altogether, focusing intently on cutting her dessert, as if a slice of lemon cake required surgical precision. Sofrona stood on the other side of the room, holding court like nothing had happened. His voice carried, warm and familiar, joking with a family friend. He clapped someone on the back, laughed, smiled. The man was performing his role again, charming, effortless, untouchable, and everyone played along. I sat, straightened the edge of my napkin, and stayed quiet. I wasn't going to make a scene. Not now, not yet. A cousin leaned over. "Your mom must have gotten some wires crossed, huh?" she whispered, more curious than kind. I forced a smile. "Seems like it." Another leaned closer. "But 300,000? That's a big misunderstanding." "It is," I said, tone flat. Underneath the pleasantries, suspicion slithered. Not theirs, mine. After another few minutes of strained smiles and overheard whispers, I stood again and made my way down the hallway toward the coat closet. I found Sofrona by the back door, checking something on his phone. "We need to talk," I said quietly. He glanced up. "About what?" "You know what." He shifted his weight, the same move he used in high school when he'd been caught sneaking back after curfew. "Look, Ayala, you told me last spring you were overwhelmed with moving. You said handling the financial stuff was giving you anxiety. I offered to help. You agreed." My mouth opened. "That never happened." "Yes, it did, over the phone." "No," I said more firmly now. "I've never asked you to manage anything on my behalf." He scoffed, almost amused. "Maybe you just forgot." I stared at him. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "That thing where you act like I'm misremembering. I'm not." He sighed, shaking his head like I was being dramatic. "Come on, Ayala, you're always so sensitive. This doesn't have to be a big deal." "It already is," I replied. The words lodged in the air between us, heavy, dense. I turned away, stepped back toward the main hall, but didn't rejoin the party. Instead, I walked along the corridor near the exit where the memory table stood. It had a soft spotlight overhead, framed in lace and candles. A tribute to family legacy, Sophrona had called it earlier during his speech. The first picture was of our parents on their wedding day, the second, a family picnic. The third, Mom holding Sophrona at the hospital the day he was born. Photo after photo filled the table, birthdays, graduations, beach trips. But as I scanned through them, something gnawed at my chest. I wasn't in them, not missing entirely, but barely present. Cropped out, off to the side, standing behind someone, blurred. A family reunion shot had Sophrona and Mom front and center. I was half-turned, barely visible at the edge. Another picture from a Christmas dinner. I remembered that night clearly because I'd flown in from Chicago just in time. And yet, in the photo, it looked like I wasn't there at all. My fingers touched the edge of one frame. My face wasn't absent. It was erased. A flash of memories surged. Birthdays I hadn't been invited to. Calls never returned. Messages read, but never answered. All of it leading to this. A table full of moments I was meant to forget. When someone edits you out enough times, you start to wonder if you ever belonged in the first place. Back inside, music swelled as Sophrona tapped his glass. People turned. He stood tall near the front of the room, wineglass raised. "I just want to say," he began, "that families go through things. Misunderstandings happen. But what matters is that we stick together, work through it, and remember what connects us." There were nods, a couple of amens, a small cheer, theatrical unity. He smiled, eyes glinting. "I know my sister has questions, and we'll work through them, because that's what family does." My stomach turned. I glanced at Mom. She gave a nod, tight-lipped, unreadable. Not agreement, not resistance. Just stillness. He was spinning a story, and she was letting him. I stepped backward, slowly moving toward the exit, my phone still in hand. I opened a new message and typed a short line to my Aunt Valmai. "Do you still have the file Dad gave you?" "The estate details?" I hit send. Then I paused. Sophrona leaned in toward Mom again, whispering. She laughed. That laugh. It wasn't real. I knew that sound. It was the same one she used when churchwomen made backhanded compliments or neighbors gossiped about our old fence. But this time, she wasn't laughing to be polite. She was laughing to preserve the image. I stared at them for a long moment, then looked once more at the memory table. They may have cropped me out of their photos, but I was about to reframe the whole damn picture. By the time I got home that night, the only thing louder than the silence in my apartment was the noise still echoing in my head. The room was dark, save for the city lights bleeding in through the blinds. I didn't turn on the TV or pour a glass of wine. I walked straight to the balcony, phone in hand, sat in the chair I usually reserved for reading, and hit play. The clip started with Mom raising her glass. I'd recorded it absent-mindedly earlier, never thinking I'd need to dissect a family toast like courtroom evidence. But there it was. Her smile fading, her eyes cutting toward me. The moment her voice dropped and she asked me about the money. I paused, rewound, then watched again, this time focusing on Sophrona. His posture, his expression before she spoke, his lack of surprise. You don't need a smoking gun when the entire room reeks of fire. I jotted down a few notes, timestamps, facial shifts, who looked away, who leaned in. Mom didn't look angry. She looked disappointed. But at what? That I didn't play along? That I wasn't grateful for something I never received? Or just that I didn't freeze quietly enough? I sat with that thought longer than I wanted to admit. Because I wasn't just confused anymore. I was starting to trace the pattern in the way I'd always been handled. Before I could spiral further, I called Valmai. She answered on the second ring. "I need to ask you something," I said. She didn't hesitate. "I'm listening." "The estate, Dad's property, was it ever sold?" There was a pause. "Yes, about 8 months after he passed. Your mother wanted to keep things out of probate." "And the money? Where did it go?" "She said it was split, half to you, half to Sophrona." I stared out into the street where a couple walked their dog in silence. "I never got anything, Valmai." "I believe you," she said gently. "Was there paperwork?" I have copies. I'll scan and send them tonight. Thank you. We ended the call without small talk. I didn't need comfort. I needed the facts. I opened my journal and wrote, "This wasn't a delay. It was a decision," and underlined it twice. A notification popped up, voicemail from Mom. I stared at it for a long moment before pressing play. Her voice was calm, measured. "I know you were blindsided. I never meant for that. I just thought your brother would handle it better. You were so busy. You're always working. Still so young." Still so young. I rewound and listened again. Still so young. I was 34. I scribbled another line in my journal. He's capable. I'm convenient to exclude. It wasn't malice. It was worse. It was default. A teacher once told me in high school that I was too assertive to be likable. That stuck, and I carried it, quietly. Learned how to downplay my sharpness, how to phrase suggestions like questions. And now here I was, again being told I was too something to be trusted. I closed my eyes and leaned back in the chair, letting the cool air settle against my skin. Then I opened a new notebook and began listing every moment that had ever felt like this. Junior year prom, Mom forgot to pick up my dress. But Sophrona's tux was ready 2 days early, pressed and hanging in the front closet. College acceptance, Mom posted a paragraph-long tribute to my brother's internship on Facebook. When I got into grad school, she sent a thumbs-up emoji in a group chat. Thanksgiving 3 years ago, I flew home early to help with dinner prep. She introduced me to guests as Sophrona's sister. It hadn't felt like favoritism then, not overtly. But standing back now, it wasn't random either. There was a pattern, and I'd trained myself to dismiss it every time. Favoritism doesn't always yell. Sometimes it whispers for so long that silence starts to feel like truth. I stood and moved back inside, grabbing my laptop from the kitchen table. I pulled up the email from Valmy, the scanned documents attached. There it was, the property sale agreement, wire transfer orders, acknowledgement letters. None of them signed by me. I printed them all. Then I messaged my CPA. Need audit of any activity tied to my SSN for last 3 years. Prioritize trust filings, business ties, transfers. Red flags only. I'd spent years detaching feelings from facts in finance. This was no different. I flipped open my journal again and wrote, "If I was left out of this, what else did they sign without me?" It was no longer just about grief. It was a forensic project. I wasn't looking for justice. I was confirming what I already suspected. This had never been a misunderstanding. It had been intentional, legal, papered, disguised in family handwriting. I clipped the estate papers into a binder, labeled it. That's when my phone pinged, unknown number. Message, I need to talk to you. There's more than just the 300K. Don't trust the trust. I reread it 3 times. It didn't feel random. And just like that, silence wasn't just suspicious, it was strategic. The text came just after noon, short, almost sterile. "Can we talk this afternoon? Just the 2 of us. Calmly. Signed, Mom. No punctuation, no emojis, no warmth." I stared at the screen longer than I needed to. Part of me hoped this was the olive branch. The rational part knew it wasn't. It read like cleanup, like someone hoping to vacuum the shattered glass before guests noticed the blood on the carpet. Still, I agreed, not out of duty, not out of softness. But because if you want to take down a wall, you need to see where the cracks already are. The drive from Denver to Fort Collins felt longer than usual. I played no music, didn't call anyone, just drove, mantra repeating in my mind like a metronome. I don't attend ambushes, I document them. When I pulled into the driveway of the house I grew up in, nothing looked out of place. The lawn was trimmed, the front door still had the same brass wreath hanger. Even the welcome mat with the faded cardinal still sat askew to the left, where it always landed after Mom opened the door too quickly. But stepping inside, it wasn't home, not anymore. She greeted me at the door with a hug, brief, one-armed, like hugging someone you weren't sure you were allowed to miss. "Come in. I made coffee," she said. I followed her into the kitchen. The smell of cinnamon was in the air, her silent peace offering. I declined the mug she offered and sat at the table instead, The one where we used to do homework. The one where she used to remind me not to interrupt Sophrona when he was explaining something important. I just wanted to clear the air, she began, her voice calm, calculated. I know things got confusing at the party. Confusing, I echoed. That's one word for it. She opened a drawer and pulled out a manila envelope, slid it across the table like a dealer in a high-stakes game. This is what I signed with your brother, she said, about the trust. I want you to see it yourself. I opened it slowly, hands steady even as my pulse quickened. The top page was standard boilerplate, power of attorney language, estate planning formalities. But halfway through, I saw it. My name. Authorizing Sophrona to co-manage disbursement and financial allocations in the interest of familial efficiency. I blinked. There, next to it, was my signature. Only, it wasn't. Not the way I signed my name. The A was too round, the tail of the E too sharp. My hands went cold. That's not my handwriting. What do you mean? She asked. I pointed. That isn't how I write my name. That's not how I loop my E. Look at the tail. It curves up. Mine doesn't. She frowned, uncertain. Well, it was sent through the estate attorney. I assumed you'd authorized it. You assumed, I repeated, flatly. Or did Sophrona tell you I had? Before she could answer, a knock sounded from the front door. I invited Valmai, she said quickly, just to keep things neutral. Of course she did. Aunt Valmai stepped in, nodded at both of us, and took a seat silently. No hugs. No greetings. Mom passed her the document. Valmai read it. Then, without looking at me, she spoke. This isn't Ayala's signature. I've seen her sign documents for 20 years. Her loop on the L is always rightward, not inward. Silence. A stillness filled the kitchen, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. Mom's eyes dropped to the table. Her hand trembled slightly as she took a sip from her coffee. I just thought, your brother said you were overwhelmed, that you asked him to help. That's a lie, I said. Her gaze snapped up, defensive. Don't call your brother a liar. Then what should I call someone who fakes a signature and claims I said things I didn't? She didn't answer. Her eyes welled, but I didn't feel sorry, not this time. Did you even ask me? I pressed. Before signing over access? Before giving him the authority to move my inheritance around? She opened her mouth, closed it. No, she finally said. I didn't. I thought I was doing what was best. I nodded slowly. For who? She didn't answer. I stood, gathered the papers, and slid them back into the envelope. Valmai didn't move. She simply watched, witnessed. I'm not angry, I said, voice even, but I'm paying attention now. Mom looked like she wanted to say more. Maybe explain. Maybe plead. But I didn't offer the space. I stepped back as she reached to hug me. Outside, the sun was starting to dip behind the trees. Shadows stretched across the porch, longer than I remembered them ever being. I unlocked my car, climbed in, and before even turning the key, pulled out my phone. I called my attorney. We need to verify a signature, I said. And then we talk consequences. Rain tapped lightly against the kitchen window, more persistent than loud, the kind of sound that made you pause without realizing it. I sat at my table, the manila envelope spread open again, pages splayed across the wood like a crime scene. In a way, that's exactly what it was, just without blood. Ink instead. Legal ink. I traced the forged signature with my eyes over and over. I knew my handwriting like I knew the contours of my own hand. That wasn't my A. That loop on the E? Too sharp, too clean. Mine curves naturally. This was a signature created by someone who studied mine, who thought mimicry would buy them invisibility. It's not the lie that breaks you, I murmured aloud, flipping to the second document. It's how long they kept it alive. I made a list. Trust documents, real estate filings, the business registration Sophrona bragged about last year. Suddenly, every memory came with a footnote. I highlighted everything with my name on it. Or what pretended to be my name. I opened my banking app, scrolling through the years. No deposit larger than $5,000 in any account. No alerts. No advisories. The trail had been scrubbed or bypassed entirely. I texted my attorney. Need immediate access to trust account history, full withdrawal records. Who signed? When? Also, check digital approvals. 15 minutes later, the response came. I'll coordinate with the bank's fraud department first thing in the morning. Morning couldn't come soon enough. By 8, I was already showered, dressed, and staring at my laptop while coffee brewed. My attorney called, voice brisk. They confirmed your name is listed on the trust, but only Sophrona is authorized to withdraw. Wait, I said, pacing the room. I'm a beneficiary. I never signed anything giving him control. That's the issue. Your name is there for formality, but the access rights? All his. I stopped moving. I need a statement history. Every transaction. We're requesting it now. I'd also recommend freezing the account pending investigation. This may fall under wire fraud if we establish false authorization. I thanked him, hung up, and stood in the stillness. They didn't just sideline me. They wrote me out with a smile. Later that day, I got a call from the bank's fraud unit. A specialist walked me through their preliminary findings. There was a large transfer, $150,000, triggered by email approval. Email? I asked. From who? Supposedly from Deliverance Monroe, your mother, but we've traced the header, and the address is one character off from her actual account. My chest tightened. Someone spoofed it. Yes, he said, and the message used very specific language. Go ahead, sweetheart. Handle this for us. We trust you. That kind of wording. I closed my eyes. That's exactly how she talks to him. You believe it was your brother? I believe someone who knows her intimately wrote it. We'll pull IP logs and digital fingerprints. I'll update you once we have a confirmed origin. I thanked him and hung up. Someone used my mother's voice to erase my future. I didn't want to wait. I couldn't. I grabbed the documents, my coat, and keys. Within the hour, I was in Fort Collins again. I didn't call first. I didn't knock when I reached the door. I just opened it. Sophrona stood in the living room, sleeves rolled up, flipping through mail like he owned the place. When he saw me, he smirked. Didn't expect company. You should have, I said. I walked in and set the papers down on the coffee table. Let's skip the pleasantries, I said. You didn't just take money, you used a fake email pretending to be Mom. He leaned back into the couch, completely at ease. You're jumping to conclusions. No, I said. I'm connecting the evidence. You're not the only one in this family who works hard, he said. You've been gone for years, living your life. I stayed. I handled everything. Funny, I said. I don't remember hard work requiring forged signatures. I slid the printout across the table. That's the email you wrote pretending to be her. Mom walked in from the hallway, saw us, froze. What's this? She asked. Read it, I told her. She did. Then looked up at me. Where did this come from? The bank, I answered. Their fraud team traced it. Her hands began to tremble. She sat down slowly. Sophrona, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Is this true? He didn't answer. I asked you a question, she repeated. I did what needed to be done, he said finally. She wasn't involved. I made the call. For the family. That's not your call to make, she snapped. The tremble in her hand had moved to her voice. I looked at both of them. Calm. Steady. You have until Friday to begin restitution, I said to him, or I file a criminal complaint. He let out a low laugh. You wouldn't. It'll ruin the family, he added. No, I said. You already did that. I'm just putting it on record. I turned to my mother. This isn't about favoritism. It's about protection. You protected him at my expense. That's the part I can't forgive. I gathered the papers again, slipped them back into my bag. She stood, tried to reach for me. I stepped back. I'm not doing this out of anger, Mom, I said. I'm doing it because silence isn't love. It's cover. And I'm done being your cover. Outside, the air smelled of wet leaves and distant thunder. I got into my car, pulled the door shut, and took one breath before my phone buzzed. Text from my attorney. IP trace results just came in. I opened the message. It didn't lead to Sophrona's condo. Pause. It pinged from inside your mother's house. 2 days after the confrontation, I woke to a knock at my door. Not physical, but digital. A beige envelope had landed in my inbox, bearing the letterhead of the family trust attorney. Formal tone, paragraph after paragraph of polished legal distancing. It said I'd misunderstood my non-controlling role in the trust, suggested that emotional interference had created confusion, and ended with the phrase, "I would learn to hate. We hope to resolve this amicably." I forwarded it to my lawyer with no added words, just a subject line. It begins. I didn't even feel angry, not in the usual sense. The fury had calcified into something cleaner, sharp, efficient. The letter wasn't just an insult, it was strategy, their move. A coordinated reminder that power lived on paper and that paper had never favored me. So I started digging. I returned to my notes, spreadsheets, document copies. I drew timelines on my kitchen wall with painter's tape, blue lines for estate actions, yellow for financial decisions, red for discrepancies. I marked signatures, compared fonts, cross-referenced timestamps, and as I connected dots, the shape that emerged wasn't chaotic, it was coordinated. By noon, I was back in my lawyer's office. He handed me a folder with a grim look. "We pulled Sofrona's phone logs," he said. "Calls with a financial advisor. One stood out." He played it. Sofrona's voice rang clear, confident. "My sister's not a numbers person. She panics over taxes. If she sees anything technical, she'll shut down. It's just better this way." I listened twice, then again. I didn't flinch. I didn't interrupt. When the recording ended, I looked at my attorney. He really thought I wouldn't hear this. He nodded. "This is enough for a fraud motion. If you want to go public—" "Not yet," I said, "but file everything." I'm not done. That afternoon, a call came in from an old college friend, Marcus, who now worked in private equity. "I saw your name listed on a new venture," he said casually. "A startup out of Boulder. Thought it was weird since we haven't spoken in years." "What startup?" "Arbor Growth. It's clean energy tech. You're listed as a silent partner." I pulled up the Secretary of State's business database. There it was, my name, spelled correctly. Denver address accurate. Signature on file, wrong. The other co-founders, Sofrona and a man I'd never met. I called Marcus back. "He used my name to legitimize a financial deal," I said. Marcus exhaled. "You need to get in front of this. Fast." I hung up and stared at the screen. He didn't just cut me out, he used me as a financial seat filler, an empty chair with a pretty name. That night, I stayed up cataloging every filing I could find. IN numbers, real estate records, shared LLCs. Some under my college mailing address, others under Mom's. Multiple shell companies, all quiet, all clean on paper, but everyone tied back to Sofrona. And my name. I printed everything, stacked it, highlighted key phrases. I recorded voice memos for every line item, documenting what I remembered, when, what I never saw. This wasn't an archive, it was a war chest. At some point past midnight, I sat in the dark and whispered to no one. The house I thought was mine? It was papered into someone else's future while I was still trying to qualify. Because I had waited. I had worked longer hours, paid off student loans, skipped vacations, put money away, told myself that when I was ready, the house would still be there, still be home. It wasn't. It had never been. The weight of that truth didn't crush me. It cleared the fog. This wasn't about just money. This was identity theft, on legal, emotional, and familial levels. I had been removed, rewritten, and repurposed. And they thought I wouldn't notice. Just before dawn, my lawyer called. "I hate waking you," he said. "I'm already up. Your mother filed a motion to block your access to the estate accounts until the dispute is settled." I didn't respond right away. When I did, my voice was clear. If Mom's legally on his side now, then this was never a misunderstanding. Pause. This is a war. 2 mornings after the asset freeze, I sat across from my attorney in his conference room, watching the storm settle into ink. He flipped through the latest filing from Deliverance's legal team, her signature stamped at the bottom, the tone polished, detached. But the phrasing, that wasn't hers. It reeked of Sofrona's arrogance. He tapped a line halfway down the page. "See this? It says you are a non-controlling beneficiary, yet they list you as co-investor on 3 active financial instruments. So they want me to shut up but still be useful, I said. He nodded, thin-lipped. The contradictions open a door. You want to file? Yes. Counter motion and an emergency injunction. They weaponized my name. Now I'll use it back. I signed my name cleanly, firmly, each stroke deliberate. If they used my name, I said, then my name will take them down. He smiled without warmth. We start by tracing co-signed assets. That afternoon, I made a trip to Boulder under a false pretense. Marcus had mentioned Arbor Growth, one of Sofrona's newest ventures, allegedly with me on the board. I scheduled a consultation using a business email, posed as a consultant doing due diligence for a green portfolio. Davis Kelman greeted me in a lobby that smelled of success, glass, espresso, and overconfidence. Ms. Monroe, he said warmly, honored to meet our silent partner in person. I didn't correct him. I smiled, sat down, pressed record on my phone discreetly. He launched into a full presentation, slides, numbers, a marketing deck that proudly displayed my name in bold as an early-stage investor and founding advisor. Your initial capital really gave us our launch pad, he said. Did it? I asked, tone neutral. Remind me, what was the entry amount? 75, he said, wired directly from the trust. I leaned in slightly. Interesting. He mistook curiosity for flattery, kept going, told me how Sofrona had vouched for me, said I didn't like the spotlight, said I was brilliant but discreet. I nodded, filed it all away. He used my face as the credibility mask. I was the resume while he ran the game. Back in Denver, I handed the audio file to my lawyer. He didn't even need to comment. The contempt in his eyes said enough. Then he pulled up another file. This came through today, he said, spinning his monitor toward me. Cypress Equity Ventures, I read. It's a shell, he confirmed. Registered with your name, your social, your address from undergrad. Approved digitally using a DocuSign clone. Where did it originate? He checked his notes. IP address is Deliverance's home network. I sat back. They used my data like it was an ATM password, I said quietly. And now it's laundering their image. He looked at me carefully. You want to file full scale? Yes, identity theft. Wire fraud, everything we've got. He started typing. I'll need affidavits, recordings, screen captures. I've already labeled the folders, I said. We're ready. Over the next 48 hours, we compiled the full report, voice memos, email headers, copies of the forged signatures, social media posts, IRS documents showing my name and filings I'd never seen. The evidence was overwhelming. This will get messy, he warned again as I signed the complaint. They'll try to settle. Go quiet. I'm not here for quiet, I said. I'm here for truth. We filed the intent to sue, naming Sofrona and Davis Kelman personally, along with Arbor Growth LLC and Cypress Equity Ventures. By nightfall, the federal fraud complaint was uploaded. The system logged it. The countdown began. The next day, I opened LinkedIn and updated my bio. No dramatics, no fire, just a simple line. Sometimes you find your name used in rooms you never entered. It didn't take long. A message, then another. Women from across industries. Some I knew, some I didn't. Quiet acknowledgements, subtle thank yous. Stories that mirrored mine too closely. A consultant from Oregon. My ex-husband listed me as co-signer on a tech fund I never touched. A lawyer in Georgia. My brother funneled startup money through my name. Took me years to undo it. It was like discovering a language I'd always spoken, finally being understood. People don't believe women until they document the pain. I didn't bring a folder. I brought a file cabinet. That night, while reviewing court deadlines, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. No caller ID. I answered. A man's voice, low, flat. Drop the suit. I didn't respond. You don't want what's coming. The line went dead. I stood there for a beat, phone still at my ear. They were wrong. I didn't start this war, but I was trained to finish it. Saturday afternoon, I stood in Valmai's dining room, which had been rearranged for war. The long walnut table was bare except for the evidence I'd laid out in neat, deliberate order. Bank statements, timestamps, voice memos, screenshots, notarized documents. Everything marked, printed, tabbed. They trickled in. Mom arrived first, clutching her purse like it might defend her. Valmai offered her tea, but she declined. Her eyes moved across the room without settling. Sofrona came last, of course, 2 minutes late, smile intact, buttoning his cuff like he was walking into brunch, not a reckoning. I stayed standing. "This isn't about accusations," I said. "It's about proof." Nobody responded. They didn't have to. I'd seen the nervous glances, the slight shift in Mom's posture when Sofrona walked in. I clicked the remote. The screen lit up behind me with a paused video still. Sofrona at a bank window, holding out a withdrawal slip. "Let's begin," I said. I hit play. The room fell into silence, broken only by the faint audio of Sofrona chatting with the teller. The camera angle showed him smiling, handing over ID, signing. Then another timestamp appeared, the same date as the forged authorization that supposedly came from me. Sofrona leaned back, casual. "That doesn't prove anything. I had verbal approval." I didn't even blink. "From who?" He didn't answer. I cued the second clip. This time there was audio. Clearer. Crueler. Sofrona chuckled as the teller handed him a receipt. "She'll never know," he said. "She doesn't look at this stuff. That's the benefit of having a sister who trusts you." Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Valmai closed her eyes. "This wasn't a mistake," I said. "It was theater, and I was the only one who didn't get the script." No one spoke. I handed out printed packets next. Emails, digital signature reports, timeline overlays, highlighted discrepancies. "And this," I said, tapping the last page, "is a voicemail from Mom, recorded 2 months ago, saying they were still discussing the allocation." I pressed play. Her voice echoed. "Don't worry about the money. We're still figuring out how to allocate it." Then I held up a separate document, dated 2 days after that call. The final allocation to Sofrona. Sofrona opened his mouth. "Don't," I said. He shut it. Mom's eyes welled. "I didn't know. I didn't know he'd already submitted it." "You didn't ask," I replied. The words hovered between us like a cloud of glass dust, small but sharp. "I trusted him," she whispered. "You used me as a shield," I said. "So when it shattered, I took the shards." Sofrona pushed back his chair, hands raised. "You brought us here to humiliate me?" "No," I said. "You did that yourself. I just gave you the stage back." Linda, one of the family friends, leaned forward. "If this were a company," she said, "you'd be in court already." Sofrona turned toward her. "You don't know what she's like. She's always felt like second best. This is her way of taking center stage." I smiled, soft and dangerous. "No, I'm just finally first in line to the truth." Valmai exhaled through her nose, just once, but it sounded like a gavel. Mom stood slowly, wobbly, like something inside her had shifted off balance. "I wanted to believe both my children were good," she said, "but I think I lied to myself too long." Her voice cracked at the edges, not from performance, but from fatigue. She turned to me. "I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner." I nodded. "Forgiveness isn't a reset button, Mom. It's just a mirror turned forward." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small key, the one to Dad's old filing cabinet, the estate key. She pressed it into my hand. "I've kept it since he passed," she said. "I think he meant it for you." I didn't cry. I just held the key, not because it fixed anything, but because it proved I wasn't crazy for wondering why I'd never had it. Sofrona stood. "This is ridiculous." "Sit down," Valmai said quietly. He ignored her and walked toward the door. "You're going to regret this," he said. I looked him dead in the eye. "No, you are." He slammed the door behind him. My phone buzzed seconds later. Unknown number. Text. "You should have just let it go. Now everyone knows. You're not done yet." I stared at the words. I wasn't done. I was just getting started. The morning after the showdown felt quieter than it should have. Not peaceful, just still. I sat at my kitchen table in Denver, hair still unbrushed, coffee untouched. The key Mom had handed me the day before was still on the counter. I hadn't moved it. I hadn't moved much at all. I replayed the entire conversation in my mind. The files, the video, the voice, Deliverance's confession, her tears, the look in Valmai's eyes, and Sofrona's exit, too fast and too loud. I stared at the ceiling and thought, just because the grenade exploded doesn't mean the war's over. The fallout was coming, not in the form of apologies, but paperwork, and silence, and the kind of cleanup that doesn't involve a broom, but legal fees and sleepless nights. I tried to eat something, toast maybe, but I couldn't. My stomach felt like it had been tied into a knot and left on a burning stove. The quiet was too loud, so I turned on my laptop and started building the next file. A new folder, next steps, voice memos, scanned receipts, a chronological breakdown of every time Sofrona had protected the family name while using mine like a signature stamp. Then the voicemail came in. I didn't recognize the number, but the voice? That was familiar. Sofrona. Slurred. You think you're better? You always acted like the quiet one. But you were just waiting to strike. You were always Mom's favorite. You just knew how to hide it better. Click. I let the silence linger. Then I forwarded the voicemail to my lawyer. Here it is. The part where he drops the mask. He didn't just resent me now. He resented who I'd always been. I remembered our childhood games. Board games where he'd always change the rules. Team projects in school where he'd talk over me and get the grade. Jokes at family dinners that passed as teasing, but were always just a little too sharp. I thought I had imagined it. Turns out, I had just learned to package it as sibling rivalry. Until now. An hour later, a certified letter landed at my door. I signed for it without reading the return address. I already knew. Inside, a collections notice, a $27,000 business line of credit, tied to one of the LLCs from the shell structure, tied to me, my social, my name, my liability. I froze for a second, then picked up my phone. Brad, I said when my lawyer answered. Tell me, he said, already hearing it in my voice. I've got a collections letter, $27,000, business line, one of the shell companies. Do you have the document? I do. Forward it now. We're filing emergency injunction. I sent the scans. Every page felt like a slap. He called back after 10 minutes. The e-signature matches the same forgery as the others. The IP address leads back to the same node. This wasn't accidental. I wasn't just erased, I whispered. I was replaced. On paper, I was the perfect puppet. He paused. We'll move fast. Move louder, I replied. I turned off my phone for a while, not to disconnect, but to stop seeing my name used like a tool. Later that night, a letter arrived. Handwritten. From Mom. The handwriting I knew as well as my own. Ayala, I don't know how we got here. I really don't. I thought your brother was saving the family from embarrassment. I thought you were just distant. Maybe I believed the wrong child. Or maybe I just believed what was easier. I didn't see what you were carrying. I'm sorry I didn't ask. That was it. No signature, no date, just folded silence. I cried. Not because I forgave her, not even because I felt seen, but because the connection we had had eroded so slowly, I hadn't realized it was gone until the damage became public. I didn't respond. Some things don't need replies. Some wounds don't want bandages. Just space. Just acknowledgement. Just because someone regrets something doesn't mean they understand it. The next morning, I created a spreadsheet. Every fake LLC, every forged signature, every email tied to my name. I scheduled meetings with my CPA, forwarded the data to my lawyer, opened a new document labeled Reputation Recovery. I called each financial institution. One by one, I explained, I clarified, I asserted, I changed passwords, set up two-factor authentication, locked all my credit profiles, froze access across the board. I even ordered a new passport. It felt like scrubbing my identity clean. Taking my name back was more exhausting than building it in the first place. Just before midnight, my phone pinged. A text from Brad. They filed a countersuit, claiming you gave verbal approval. It's going to court. I stared at the screen, breath slow, deliberate. So now they wanted to battle over the one thing I'd never given them. My consent. I sat at the corner of my attorney's office, the walls lined with legal texts and framed degrees, but none of it dulled the weight in the room. My CPA had just finished flipping through the final stack of returns. He placed the last file down, adjusted his glasses, and said, "It's worse than we thought." I didn't flinch. "Your social security number appears on 2 years of K-1 filings, schedule forms from partnerships that don't legally include you. You've been declared as having received distributions totaling over $140,000. "I didn't see a dime," I said. My lawyer nodded grimly. "Which makes this not only fraudulent, but potentially implicating. If the IRS doesn't see the correction soon, they'll hold you accountable." "They didn't just fake my role," I murmured. "They tried to make me complicit." He tapped the desk. "We should get ahead of this. Issue a press release before this becomes a headline you didn't write." I agreed. The damage wasn't just financial anymore, it was reputational. And reputations, unlike checks, take longer to clear. That night, the final document hit my inbox, a full copy of Sofrona's holding company's tax filings. There it was, my name, listed under Schedule K-1, my address, my identification, a partnership, on paper, that never existed. They built empires on my silence, I whispered to myself. My lawyer had called it a textbook case of fraudulent reporting, a scheme where the name gave credibility and the absence of a voice gave room to maneuver. You can steal money, but stealing someone's reputation? That's the real currency of war. 3 days later, while cleaning out old recordings on my phone, I stumbled across a voice memo I didn't remember saving. I pressed play, assuming it was a grocery list or work note. It was Sofrona, laughing. "Mom," he said to someone off screen. "She's just an ATM with emotional guilt. She'll keep paying." She always does. My chest didn't ache. It didn't burn. It went cold. Not for me. For her. When deliverance showed up unannounced later that week, coat still on, breath shallow, I didn't ask what she wanted. I just pressed play. She stood there in silence as the audio filled the space. Her face didn't crumple. It collapsed from the inside. She didn't speak. She didn't sit. She left. And in that silence, I understood. I didn't need her apology. Her walking away was the apology. Later that afternoon, I sat with my legal team and finalized the wording for a public statement. A formal dissociation from all listed business entities, a record of identity theft and asset misuse, a confirmation that I had filed for full criminal liability against all named parties. I posted it to LinkedIn without fanfare. Ayala Monroe, reclaiming what was mine. It caught fire, not with outrage, but with recognition. Women from across the country messaged me, some quietly, some with rage, some just with a thank you. My inbox filled with stories that mirrored mine. Sisters, daughters, wives, women who had been legally silenced with ink they never signed. I didn't respond to them all, but I read every word. People don't believe women until they document the pain, I told my lawyer. So I brought a file cabinet. 2 days after the post went live, I received another update, this time from Deliverance's estate planner. She had removed Sofrona from all active accounts, dissolved their joint holdings, and started submitting tax amendments. No flowers, no calls, just formal corrections, one after another. I got a single email from her. "I didn't protect you, but I will stop protecting him." That was all it said. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just exhaled. It didn't feel like closure, but it did feel like someone, somewhere, had finally flipped the light switch in a room I'd lived in far too long. That night, I returned home late, my head still spinning with meeting notes and court logistics. I set my phone on the counter and walked to the kitchen. Another buzz. Unknown sender. "Nice move, but you just made us enemies. Get ready." No name, no signature, but I knew the tone. I stood in the dark, screen glowing in my palm. Justice may have begun, but now I had to prepare for retaliation. The apartment was so quiet, it felt like the walls were holding their breath. No missed calls, no new voicemails, no unknown numbers lighting up my screen. Just stillness. I lay in bed longer than usual, staring at the ceiling, tracing the cracks like they were a map out of a place I no longer belonged to. The silence wasn't unsettling anymore. It was clarity. No deliverance asking to talk. No Sophrona threats. Just space. I sat up, grabbed my phone, and opened the contact list. I hovered over their names, Mom, Sophrona, and hit delete. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt necessary. Like closing a browser tab I should have shut down years ago. There's a grief in choosing peace, I whispered aloud. It means accepting some bridges won't be rebuilt. And maybe that was okay. Later that morning, I cleared off the dining table, sat down with my laptop, and opened a fresh document. I labeled it Memoir Notes, not because I planned to publish anything, but because I needed to trace how I got here, not just legally, but emotionally. Each paragraph I typed uncovered another small betrayal, another time I smiled instead of speaking. I wrote about the subtle ways I trained myself to be likable, to keep the peace, about the birthday party where they gave Sophrona a speech and handed me a paper napkin with my name misspelled. I underlined a sentence 3 times. Being the bigger person isn't always the wiser one. I didn't cry, but I felt something loosen in my chest. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. No one was scheduled. No deliveries pending. When I opened the door, there was no one there, but a small box sat on the mat. No sender. Inside was a letter, handwritten on cream stationery. I understand now, not everything you said, but enough. That was it. Beneath it, wrapped in soft cloth, was the pendant my father had given Deliverance the day I was born, her initials and mine, carved in the back. I held it like it might dissolve, like it had waited years to make its way to my hands. I didn't call, didn't write back. That gesture was the answer. Not reconciliation, but recognition. That night, I walked through my apartment slowly, like I was finally seeing it as mine. I paused by the bookshelf, pulled down the old family photo in its silver frame, and tucked it into a drawer. In its place, I put a photo of myself accepting a business award 6 months ago. Alone, smiling. I reopened my original lawsuit documents, read through every line, and I felt proud. Not because I'd won, but because I had spoken, loudly, legally, fully. You don't need to burn bridges, I said aloud, if you were the only one ever walking across them. The next day, I met Valmai at our usual coffee shop. She was already seated, a tea in hand, her eyes as tired as mine. Thank you, I said, for standing beside me without needing credit. She nodded. Thank you for finally standing for yourself. We talked about things only women who'd been tired too long could understand. About mothers who protected too hard and too wrong. About families that mistake silence for loyalty. She stirred her tea. You going to talk to your brother again? No, I said. Even if he apologizes, I don't think I want to build that road back. She didn't question me. She just nodded again. Sometimes, she said, healing doesn't mean returning. It just means walking away without limping. I smiled. My family tree might be smaller now, but it finally has sunlight. That night, I sat in bed, laptop on my lap, watching my legal post ripple across digital spaces. No headlines. Just quiet shares. Quiet acknowledgements. Quiet ripples that felt louder than any storm I'd lived through. I closed the screen, took a breath. I forgave them. I whispered to no one. But I didn't forget. That's how I protect myself now. And if they knock again, I won't open the door, I'll open the truth. The courthouse steps were cold under my heels. I stood for a moment longer before walking inside, breathing deep, grounding myself in the quiet I had fought so long to earn. I wore the same navy suit I'd worn the day I pitched my first investor deck. A subtle reminder to myself that everything I was about to reclaim had always belonged to me. You ready? My attorney asked as we passed security. I nodded. More than I've ever been. The courtroom wasn't packed, but enough eyes lingered to remind me that this wasn't private anymore. This was precedent. Sophrona wasn't present. His lawyer claimed he was experiencing stress-related complications. I wasn't surprised. The judge didn't take long. The evidence submitted is thorough, consistent, and corroborated by digital records. Ms. Monroe, the court rules in your favor on both restitution and damages. I didn't smile. I simply exhaled. It was over. Or so I thought. As we exited the courtroom, a process server approached Deliverance. She barely reacted as he handed her the second envelope, my personal suit against her, not for money, but for misusing her parental authority to sign away my rights. She opened it, looked at me. She started, but I cut her off. You don't need to explain, I said. Just read it. Then decide what kind of mother you want history to remember. She pulled out her checkbook, hands trembling. In front of everyone, she wrote the check, $130,000, signed and dated. She handed it to me. I looked her in the eye. Keep it. Her mouth opened, confused. This isn't about repayment, I said, folding the check in half and sliding it back. It's about recognition, and you're late. That evening, the story broke. First on a financial blog, then a local news site. By morning, national media had picked it up. Daughter wins identity fraud suit. Family scandal unfolds in civil court. The headline wasn't dramatic, but it landed. By the end of the week, Sofrona's name was tied to 4 shell companies under IRS audit. His accounts were frozen. Deliverance stepped down from 2 nonprofit boards, citing family complications. My LinkedIn inbox became a war zone of invitations, webinars, TEDx panels, magazine interviews. I declined almost all of them. This isn't a brand, I told my lawyer. It was survival. But the ripple effect kept moving. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like the line between justice and dignity had finally met in the middle. A week later, I agreed to meet Deliverance one last time. Her request. My terms. We sat in the garden behind the Fort Collins house. The grass was overgrown, the porch paint peeling. Nothing had been cared for in months. I've rewritten my will, she said softly. Everything will go to you. I shook my head. Let the house stay empty. I built my own. She looked at me, tired eyes searching for a version of me she no longer had access to. I didn't know how much I was hurting you. You did, I said. You just thought it wouldn't matter. She blinked. I never meant... I know, I said, standing. But I'm done sitting in that silence. I left her there, in the backyard, with the uncut grass and the memories she didn't want to name. Back in Denver, I started something new, a nonprofit, quiet, referral-based, focused on helping women navigate financial abuse within families. We didn't take public donations, no PR, just one mission: help women leave paper prisons written in trust documents and guilt. I hosted the first workshop in a borrowed office space downtown. One woman cried after reading her brother's forged signature. Another left a marriage that same week. I sat across from a young woman one evening, barely 25, shaking as she told me her uncle had opened a company using her credit. I didn't even know what an EIN number was, she said. You do now, I replied, handing her the template for a formal dispute letter. She smiled, shaky but strong. You're like proof that we can survive it. No, I said. I'm proof that you can win. You don't fight to win. You fight so others don't have to. That's where fulfillment lives, not in courtrooms, not in checkbooks, but in what you build when no one's left to tell you you can't. That Friday, I received a package at my apartment. No return label, no sender's name. Inside, a worn leather binder. Familiar, too familiar. It was Sofrona's original startup pitch, the one he'd never finished, the one he claimed I wasn't ready to help with years ago. A sticky note was attached. Thought you'd want this. You were always better at it anyway. No signature. But it didn't need one. He finally said it. Not with an apology, with surrender.